This week, we got some news that I think potentially points to a pretty bright future for the EverQuest franchise. Now, I'm kind of going down a bit of a rabbit hole on this, but I really feel like enough pieces have come into place that I'm at the point that I'm pretty much convinced that a new full-blown EverQuest MMO is in development, and I kind of want to piece everything together for you here in this video. So earlier this week, Daybreak Games, formerly known as Sony Online Entertainment, creators of EverQuest, PlanetSide, Star Wars Galaxy, H1Z1, and numerous other titles, announced that they were breaking into 3 separate studios, with each of them focusing on a specific franchise. So first there's Dimensional Inc., who will be handling DC Universe Online. Then there's Rogue Planet, that will be working on the PlanetSide franchise. And finally, we have Dark Paw Games, who, according to Daybreak, will continue to support EverQuest games while developing the next innovation for the franchise. So what could that next innovation be? Well, we do know that there is a mobile EverQuest game being made. Through a bit of research, I found out that that is being handled by a separate company called Nantworks, and that, in combination with several interviews and an AMA that have taken place over the past year, make it pretty obvious that that is an entirely different project to what is also going to be a full-blown EverQuest MMO that is in development right now. But before we get into those interviews and before we get too excited about the idea of a new full EverQuest game, I want to address one of the 2 massive elephants that are in the room with this conversation. First, we have EverQuest Next. This was the most recent EverQuest project that people were excited for that never came to fruition. First actually teased all the way back in 2009, and then the official reveal happened in 2012, where they presented what looked like an exciting new future for EverQuest, promising to deliver the largest sandbox-style MMO ever, with a fully destructible world, filled with dynamic events, emergent gameplay, and a unique AI system where NPCs would fulfill their own unique goals. The whole idea was that they were going to be moving away from the traditional theme park MMO, with its handcrafted but fairly limited quests and stories and activities, towards an evolving, ever-changing world that could stay fresh for years to come. That was the pitch, and people were excited for it. In addition to that, in 2013, they revealed the spin-off of EverQuest Next, which was called Landmark, and this was kind of meant to be a test bed for the voxel engine that EverQuest Next was going to use. It allowed players to build their own creations that could potentially actually make it into the full MMO. And then in 2014, we continued to see more updates about Next, along with the closed beta of Landmark getting released. And then in 2015, all of a sudden, Sony Online Entertainment was sold off and then rebranded to Daybreak Games. Immediately, that caused some concern, but people said, you know what? We're so far into development of these games, nothing's really gonna happen, right? Well, just 1 year later, EverQuest Next was unceremoniously canceled, with the main reason cited by Daybreak that the game wasn't fun and it wouldn't meet fan expectations. 7 years after being teased, EverQuest Next was no more. Now, there have been lots of theories and rumors as to what happened with Next. A lot of people say that it never existed, and the whole idea was just to get people to purchase the kind of limited scope version in Landmark. Well, we did get some clarification, according to people who worked with the game, as to what really happened. So besides Daybreak's claim that they couldn't find the fun, the game also apparently failed to overcome technical challenges around the voxels and destructible world. In an interview last year, Daybreak game director Holly Longdale said there was a real nugget of an idea there, but a technical hurdle the team just couldn't get over. All the other stuff that EverQuest is kind of got lost because it was focused on voxels and a dynamically generated changing world. There was not enough computational power. If people are digging holes, you have to update pathing for the entire world. So besides just the direction straying away from what they believe made EverQuest fun and enjoyable, there apparently were some major technical problems, and she points to this idea that with this voxel world and this sandbox that they were trying to build, it was just too technically difficult and they really couldn't get the game to run smoothly. I guess I really can believe that, because taking a look at what Landmark was, I spent some time with it and I had fun playing that game, but at no point did it ever run very smoothly, and that was just very limited compared to what we expected the full-blown MMO to be. So if you have this massive destructible world, I can understand. Now, we can't say that without pointing to the fact that there are destructible voxel sandbox games that exist out there. I mean, take a look at something like Minecraft. The world and terrain terrain is constantly changing, and that's just the most popular example. There are numerous destructible world voxel-based games that exist, but maybe the difference here is that they were trying to build one on a massive scale with this massive open world versus something like Minecraft, which is much smaller, not only in scale, but also in detail. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but evidently, according to this interview, it wasn't just them straying away from what made EverQuest fun, it was also that they technically just couldn't seem to get the game to work. With everything that happened with Next and Landmark as well, we should certainly be wary of what the future of EverQuest could potentially mean. But we do have some, I think, pretty clear evidence through interviews and some rumors. EverQuest 3 is happening, and it's in development right now. So rumors started popping up in 2018 after a Reddit post from what claimed to be an ex-Daybreak employee stated that EverQuest 3 was in fact in development. Now, in addition to this, he also made a bunch of other claims, which a handful of them have since come true, leading some sort of credit to the idea that this was in fact an employee who had some inside knowledge. But we're not just gonna go off rumors, let's go straight to the horse's mouth. So in 2019, we saw several mentions of the next EverQuest project directly from Daybreak. So in that same interview from earlier, where Holly Longdale talked a bit about what caused EverQuest Next to fail, she also outlined some of their plans for the franchise going forward. She says that the team has spent the past few years evaluating what makes EverQuest EverQuest, and whatever we do in the future, we're going to embrace what we are, which she says is primarily two things: classic high fantasy and community dependency. She says that anything we talk about in the future, those are the two nuggets. It's questing with other people, it's having a role on a team. I don't think we'll ever move away from that. You don't think EverQuest and think single player game. Now, the article also mentions how a lot of modern MMOs are kind of hand-holdy and cater to solo play, to which she says that will never be us. Whatever we do in the future, we're going to embrace what we are, and we'll make something we think is the next evolution for EverQuest. So that is kind of vague. She just barely mentions, like, yeah, we've been thinking about EverQuest, and whatever we do next, it's gonna hold on to the core tenets of classic high fantasy and good social interaction, community dependency, as she says specifically. But then, in June of 2019, an EverQuest fan site hosted an AMA speaking to several members of the EverQuest team, and in it, Holly mentions the next EverQuest game a handful of times. She says, there is a future and I don't have specifics for you. The specifics will come when we have meaningful news. We will definitely do something with the IP. A strict remake? Probably not. Will it embody the EQ spirit? Most likely, yes. She also said that the team wants to build this franchise up even better, but didn't want to start hyping a title until we are certain the promise of the game can be realized. And I really think that that is a nod to the failure of EverQuest Next, with them announcing and revealing the project too early, but then realizing several years into development that they not only couldn't get it working technically, but they also managed to lose what made it fun in the first place. Now, when pressed further about the failure of EverQuest Next, Holly said, Next was real, but a long way from completion when we had to walk away from it. Very tough, but the right decision at the time. There's mountains of great work that went into that game that won't go to waste. We aren't done with the franchise, not by a long bow shot. God damn it, why did she have to do that? You take those discussions of kind of the things they learned from Next and what they plan to do with the franchise going forward, and the fact that they are working on something at the moment, it's just too early for them to talk about it, and then you add on to the fact that we just now have this formation of Darkpaw Games, a division of Daybreak that is now exclusively working on EverQuest, and Holly Longdale, the person who's made all these quotes that we've talked about so far, she's the executive producer of Darkpaw Games. So now, with all of this said, how do we know that all of this discussion about the next iteration of EverQuest isn't just the mobile game? In the same AMA we just talked about that took place on that EverQuest fan site, other members of the EQ team directly discussed that the mobile game is its own separate thing being handled by another team. So when asked for details, they said, I don't know if anyone here knows anything about it, but it's outside of our control. While we as a company will have input into what anyone else does with EverQuest EverQuest on mobile devices, we as individuals aren't going to be designing it. So we've got a team of EverQuest people who are working on the next EverQuest project who don't want to talk about it too early, and they're associated with the EverQuest mobile game, but they're not working directly on it. So great news, right? Like, this seems like pretty plainly obvious that an EverQuest 3 is happening. It's in development between the rumors, the numerous interviews, the AMA that happened with members of the EverQuest team. We could get excited now, right? Well, no. Because there was two elephants in the room. The first one was EverQuest Next and the failure that was. The second one is the company, Daybreak Games. So Daybreak Games, previously known as Sony Online Entertainment, has a terrible reputation with the mishandling and closure of many beloved franchises. In fact, here's a list of all of the games the company has shut down and are no longer playable. Notable titles include PlanetSide, Star Wars Galaxies, Matrix Online, the Just Survive spin-off of H1Z1, and of course, EverQuest Next. In fact, just earlier this month, PlanetSide Arena, a game that went into early access last September, was shut down and canceled. It didn't even make it half of a year. Daybreak does not have a good track record, and there's a good chance that this whole splitting up into 3 separate studios, each attempting to, focus on their own IP, it's just an attempt for them to shed the bad reputation attached to Daybreak Games' name. But you know what? Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that means that they're looking for a clean break, a fresh start, and a chance to do things right. Or it could just be that they're hoping to sucker some potential future buyers out of sales of upcoming releases by distancing those games from the Daybreak name. That's a possibility as well. I think another possibility is that splitting off into these 3 separate studios is a chance for them to sell them off potentially. If that is the case, that could also be a good thing for these franchises. I mean, I think it's promising that in these interviews, Hawley does talk about the core tenets of what made EverQuest special, and specifically bringing up the, hey, you have to work with other people. This isn't going to be a solo experience. You don't really see a lot of MMOs do that nowadays. Could be for good reason. Could be that a lot of the game-playing audience isn't interested in that experience anymore. We do see some games come out like that, but by and large, a majority of games, they cater to people who don't have other people to play with. It's interesting. I don't know. It's still really early on. Nothing has been officially announced, but I'd be willing to put money on the fact that someone somewhere is working on EverQuest 3 right now. I don't know that we're ever going to see it, but I'm pretty sure it's happening. It's fun. I don't know. Who knows if any of this shit's actually going to happen. Now I got to edit this video knowing that I don't know if any of this is real. Okay.